have two excellent speakers along to talk about fundraising this evening. So first up, we will have John Preston. John is the Trust Foundation and Lottery Executive at the Conservation Volunteers. So John's going to speak to us really about the type of funding that's involved, the opportunities that might be out there, where to find them, and how to go about applying for them. And then we'll be hearing from Ben. And Ben Luger is involved in the newly formed Rooted Chippenham Community Tree Nursery. And they recently set out with a target to raise £1,500 on crowdfunder. They smashed that within 24 hours, and they're currently well over £4,000 at the minute. So hopefully we're going to hear a lot of good tips on how to raise money from Ben. So I'm sure you'll all be keen to hear about that. Before we kick off with John's presentation, there will be an opportunity for questions and answers at the end. So once both John and Ben have presented, so if you have any specific questions, do please pop them in the chat. I can take a note of them, and then we can ask questions from John and Ben at the end. And also, just to let you know that this video is this webinar is being recorded. The video will be made available on our YouTube channel and on our website as soon as possible after tonight. So hopefully within the next week or so. So yeah, I guess it just leaves me now to invite John to come and speak to us about the funding and fundraising opportunities. So I'll hand over to you, John. Thank you very much.
I'll just try and get my slides to share. It not be. Does that come through? Have we got pictures now?
Not just yet.
Okay.
Let me know if you want any assistance.
I've got that. It's showing me the presenter view on one and the full screen on the other one.
Oh, okay.
So through to you.
You have presentation mode ready on PowerPoint. You just need to make sure you've shared on Zoom itself with that green button at the bottom of the Zoom window.
Just go back. Sorry, this all. Is that?
There we go. Yeah, perfect. And if anyone can't see it, just send a message in the chat.
Okay. Sorry, it worked really straightforward on the run through it last night. Okay. So I'm from the Conservation Volunteers, and managed to get a change of job title because we were doing more than trust foundations and lottery. We were doing some government schemes as well. So we're now back as business development people. So I've been with the Conservation Volunteers a long time, basically since I left college, project officer, local manager, and came into this type of role 6 years ago, and was Yorkshire, north of England, and in the current reshuffle, myself and a colleague are now covering the UK. I'll outline the organisation shortly, but I'm also a trustee and treasurer for our local parks trust and part of the committee of the Friends of the Local Park. So I'm doing things at lots of different scales. So hopefully I can share some of that with you. If you haven't heard of us, because although we're a national, we have quite a patchy coverage and are less present than we used to be. So we're national in that we are in England, Scotland and Northern Ireland, sadly no longer in Wales. We've about 250 people and 40 offices stretching from Hastings up to Stirling and across the country. The main things we run are midweek practical teams, green gym health projects, some citizen science training and education, so less practical, but involving people in surveys for marsh tits and various schemes for counting and collecting data. But some of that is primarily to just enthuse people about the wildlife and landscapes around them. We have a number of tree nurseries, but a particularly large one is one that is in Northern Ireland at the Folk and Transport Museum. I think it is at Coultra. Used to be at Clandeboy. Has been running for a long time, supplying lots of trees in Northern Ireland. Some of you may be members of the community network. If you don't know about that, there's basically some resources and a number of affiliated offers available to members of the community network. Membership is free. Have a look if you're interested. Just aware I've got half an hour here. So, introduction to fundraising. A little bit of what I'm sharing with you has been borrowed from a course I did at York CVS to refresh myself a couple of years back, provided by someone called Melody at a consultancy by the interesting name of Beware of the Bull. But yeah, there's one or two diagrams that I have kept in from the notes that I took. Okay, so yeah, fundraising. It's a challenge, can be. It's a very competitive world out there. So what I'm going to run through is a number of basically pointers. I believe, John, that you're going to be sharing the PowerPoint after for people. So if that's easy for them to look at rather than going through a video, they're very welcome to it. So I think it's just sort of saying right at the beginning, what are the things that you need to think through for the piece of work that you're doing? You know, and if you're not, if you're doing it on behalf of an organization that you've come to, do you understand what they do? Have the information to hand about the tree nursery project, if that is the organization and the project, or the organization that hosts the tree nursery that you're looking to raise money for? Be clear about what you're actually being asked to raise the money for. What are the immediate priorities in terms of equipment, tree supplies, fencing? If it's a project that uses paid people to do some of the work, what are those people going to do? How much are we going to have to pay them, and so on? And these are very generic terms here. So what is the problem your project is trying to address? But I guess might be you want to grow some trees for a project, or the tree nursery might be part of a project which is more focused, certainly in the application, on the people involvement. Is it schools? Is it people with disabilities? Is it an older people's program? What are you trying to do? And is your plan the best way to address the problem? Why do you want to grow trees locally when you may be able to buy the number of trees you'll produce relatively easily if you had some money? Why are we going down that route when there are trees from elsewhere? So is it the best way? How does your project address what the problem is? If you need 20,000 trees for a project, is how many are you going to grow it in the nursery? What's the special thing about those trees? Excuse me. Are there particular species it's difficult to get right? Are there certain local provenances that you're wanting to cultivate which you can't find a ready supplier for? Or do you just want to be able to involve people in the whole process, from collecting seed to growing the tree to then taking it out to put it in the landscape where it's going to go? Another one's about how will you measure your work to prove it's working? Well, if it's trees, probably fairly straightforward. You're going to get trees out the end of the nursery that go out into the land. If it's stuff about the people side of the program, maybe needs a bit more thought. And the key one, how much money are you going to need and for what? And do you have some ideas about where it's coming from? And getting the figures right is reasonably important. I've just had some stuff delivered today for Friends of the Park, and sort of, the budget we started off with for this has got about 7 or 8 budget lines in, and there's been some jiggling around as certain things have changed and other grants have come in. So yeah, have a plan. The basics. So this is, if you're, someone says, oh, you know a bit about fundraising, come and help us out. So what most funders are looking for, that there's a clear constitution for the organisation that says what it's going to do, and that the project is included in it. So I guess if someone says, oh, we could host the tree nursery under the wing of another organisation in your community, does it actually fit? Do their mem and arts have something that says they could run a tree nursery? Which possibly means, are they sufficiently open and all-encompassing that someone can't look at it and go, it says you're going to run the I'll pick an example, an old folks luncheon club. So how come you're also got a tree nursery? But a constitution that said we will also run social and, therapeutic activities for older people in the village. If you're running a tree nursery with older people, that would fit. It doesn't have to say tree nursery, but it's just something to be aware of. Almost all funding expects you to have at least 3 unrelated people on your committee, bank account, 2 unrelated signatories. This may be absolutely teaching you to suck eggs here. Some people want to see how you've gone on financially in at least the past year. If you're a larger organization and maybe like a subgroup somewhere, has the committee said that you can make this bid and take this project on? I'll guess equally, if you have a committee for the tree nursery, are you a rogue operator doing something? Or has everybody else said, yeah, this is what we want to do, and if you get the money, we want to run with it? Some of the larger schemes will say, particularly if you get to a local authority, even a neighbourhood committee, they may want you to have some policies in place. And if you're a very small group, not employing anybody and so on, you may not yet have got as far as having policies. Health and safety may be able to say, well, we don't employ 5 people, therefore we don't need a comprehensive policy and so on. And again, if you're writing the bid for somebody else, to have agreed with the other people a very simple summary overview of your organisation, separate from the project you're going to do. A little bit about statuses, because funds often have stipulations as to who they work with. So the Friends of the Local Park is an unregistered charitable organisation. So we're not a registered charity, we're not anything else. But the rules say you can only be that if you turn over less than 5,000. And the star at the bottom comes to is when I accepted a grant back in the autumn, the funder said, if you sign this, you are promising if your turnover for the year goes over 5,000, you will commence registration with the Charity Commission. We're now trying to get a cricket wicket in the park restored for 7,500. So we've actually struck an arrangement with a local community arts centre who have a quite broad constitution that they will host the money for us, because we don't want to become a registered charity just for 1 year. It's a lot of faff, it's a lot of hassle, and to be honest, my fellow committee members don't want to go there. So, but you will find some funds will only work with charities or charity incorporated organisations. So, and if you have that coming up a lot and you want to turn over 4,500 a year or whatever it is, and you can't do that without going to some of these people, you may have to register before you legally have to, if that makes sense. Registered charity, yeah, you go and get registered with the Charity Commission. In the last decade or so, there are other alternatives that have come in. One, that our Parks Trust is a charitable incorporated organisation, because that combines the advantages of being a charity with the status of being a limited company, which means if you get into financial difficulties, the liability of the trustees is limited. Whereas if you're only a charity, and if you're an unregistered organisation, your trustees, committee members, whatever you call them, are liable for any debts that are racked up. Previously, so like the Conservation Volunteers is both a registered charity and a private limited company to protect, the limitations of or the liability of the trustees. Other things you may hear of in organisations are community interest companies, which generally are social enterprises, so they're not looking to pay dividends to shareholders and stuff. They'll have a clause in their setup that says any surpluses that we generate that we don't need to reinvest in the core project, we will spend, say, in the local community. Some funders are okay with CICs. Some funders go, we don't work with them. So again, in your research, if you are a CIC rather than one of the others, you just need to be aware of that. But getting a partner charity to host the bid, if they're allowed to, is one way round the situation. And indeed, something else I'm involved in, can't remember what they are. I think they're a cooperative, was set up to run a building and to run a community farm, but also now does stuff that came out of the COVID pandemic, like food pantries and stuff, is actually going to adopt a related charity to put some of their activity through because they can't get certain grants. Okay, so project plan. I'll come on to how you find a fund, but you found a fund and you're looking to crack on and make a bid. It's not the time. Okay, number one, always assume the reader knows nothing about your project and possibly even nothing about your type of work. So you have to be really clear in what you do is something that will interest the people who are going to read it. So you've got some points there. What are you going to do and when, how it's going to be achieved. You know, you're going to run a certain number of events through the seasonal cycle of a tree nursery, or if it's a more ongoing social project, how often do you meet? Once a week, once a month, whatever. Who's going to be involved? Who organises things? And once again, those costs. So just, you know, have you got the people you need to deliver the project? Need and demand is a complex one. I'll gloss over this because I'm aware the time is rocking away with me. You can come back to it. There's this lovely diagram talking about need and demand, which is, you know, some of it is national. We need to plant trees everywhere, down to why do we need to plant trees in whichever community you're based in, and what's the interest of local people, what's the, you know, who's planning the schemes that are going to use the trees that you're growing, and so on and so forth. So funders' criteria. Eligibility, these are generally questions that are straight yes, no. So I've talked about types of organisations. The type of scheme, is it a donation, which is, you know, almost falls under the, yeah, really like what you're doing, jolly good show, here's some money. A grant, which is very specific, we're giving you £1,000 because you'll say you'll do X, Y, and Z for it. And sponsorship, which is probably on the commercial side, where they'd like to fund you to do something, but they definitely want some exposure of their name. You know, I guess could be a local garden centre perhaps is willing to support your programme, but they'd like to see their name in lights in return for however much they're willing to put in. There are a number of schemes, be they grants or sponsorship, where there are turnover stipulations. More commonly, the ones I fall foul of, certainly in the day job, is maximum size of turnover, and it is coming down. If you're involved in larger organisations, you know, schemes that would fund us up to 10 million, well, we've gone over 10, which has ruled us out from quite a few. But I've seen ones that were 5 come down to 3. I've seen schemes that funders have different bits, and some of them they're stipulating 500,000, and in some cases quite a lot less than that. If your tree nursery is part of a larger organisation, be that regional or national, some funders do not like local branches. They will usually say no local branches unless you truly have a local committee and you have your own bank account. The size of projects that they're wanting to fund, you know, some people like to see you having a basket of funders to get you to your target. Some people want to be the majority. Some people say we want to fund the whole of what it is. So you may have to chop your project into suitably sized chunks and create some logical reason why that bit is project A and that bit was project B. To somebody else, you might put A and B together and sell them A plus B. But you need to, usually what I say is things need to have a clear-cut red line around them, which might even be as simple as, yeah, you want to fund that, you will fund a weekly activity program for the first quarter of the year. That's got a beginning and an end to it, so that's defined. Some people only want to fund capital, which may be if you are putting fencing around the tree nursery, or if you've got a large site and you want machinery, that's capital. Revenue is sort of stuff that's spent in year and isn't kept on. If you were investing in a tree nursery site, putting up shed, maybe for some purpose or other, putting up fencing, they probably want to see what tenure you have of the site, that you can't be asked to leave it in 2 years' time when what they're funding has still got lots of life in it. funders' criteria are more nuanced. They will say, we want to fund this sort of thing, certain things. If it's very much tree production that you're doing, that's probably fairly clear cut. The more social ones, perhaps more open. So how well you think you meet their outcomes. They may say, we only want to fund the less well-off neighbourhoods. You'll have to argue your case. They'll want good value for money. You know, how much do your trees or how much does your people involvement cost compared to other people's? They may be interested in your mechanisms. And some people always want to fund new, shiny stuff rather than going, it's proven, it's trusted. We just need to do it again. You know, read the guidelines carefully, try and spot everything they've said. If they offer briefings in person or online, you quite often will get grants officers talking around the guidance as to how they interpret it. And that can sometimes be really quite useful. Some people I know will only ever bid to a funder they managed to talk to. Some of them, because the number of people knocking on the door, won't talk to anybody. I was on another course I went on, it was saying, just try and ring up with a query and try and blag it and see if you catch them on a good morning or afternoon and see what you can prize out of them. Because at one level, you're trying to save their time and yours by not putting in bids that are not going to succeed, if only you'd asked the question. We've already covered this. Businesses put up money. Individuals put up money. Sounds like Ben's had a lot of support from individuals, I suspect. Yeah. Trusts and foundations and the statutory agencies. This was one of the ones I nicked. It was, she liked the little, initials meaning things. Where you find stuff really depends what scale you're operating at. I've got very cheeky at photographing other people's dedication boards. I've been funding for some building projects. So if I go into environmental buildings, I will look for the board that says, with grateful thanks to, and I'll take a photograph of it and I'll go back and I will look up all the ones that I don't know. If you have access to people's newsletters, maybe other tree nurseries, who's been funding them? Might they fund you? Other ones more general, whatever it's called in your neighbourhood, the Council for Voluntary Service, the Volunteer Bureau, they all have slightly different names up and down the land, may produce some sort of newsletter electronic alert system. Some of the CVSs and people have access to various funding toolkits, which you can sign up to for small organisations fairly cheaply or for free. You can try using Google and ChatGPT, whack in Fund a Tree Nursery, whatever it is you're trying to do. Lots of places have got community foundations who will administer grants themselves. Some of them will also have some intelligence as to other funders that they're aware of that may be able to help you. If you're into the bigger stuff, there are various subscription services listed there. And if you're big enough to be interested in local authority contracts and government alerts, then there are platforms for those as well. So let's do it. Number one, double check your deadline. I thought it was the 17th. No, it was the 13th. That's Friday, not Monday. Sorry, I've got too many days in there. Also watch out for the time of day. They vary. But please try and finish early because life can throw things at you and suddenly you can't be available for the last day. And it's very stressful being there at 2 hours to the deadline, 50 minutes to the deadline, 5 minutes to the deadline, trying to get it into the platform. More and more things are online platforms or just you've got to send the email. Email or post. If you've left it right to the last minute because you thought you could email it and suddenly it says print it out and post it, you snookered. Please get all the way to the end of the instructions. Yeah, I've been there. A word of caution on online platforms. Some allow you to enter and save. Some, it's a single session. So hopefully with those, they have given you an offline version which you can prepare all your answers in. Be aware occasionally the offline version doesn't match the online version. There may be extra questions. If they don't give you that, my tip is to go through and put A, B, C, D, or 5 X's in every text box, because some of them won't let you scroll through without putting something in the boxes. So just put in any old rubbish, just get all the way to the end, see what it says. Particularly the declaration page sometimes, that's where they will suddenly say, we need a copy of this. Bank statement from the last 3 months, your environmental policy. So go to the end in the preparation stage, because you may be able to go to other members of your organisation going, get me the bank statement, treasurer. Yeah. Can you find an environmental policy if we haven't got one? Go and borrow one from somewhere, have a look at it, put our name on the top of it. Because if you're a little tree nursery organisation, you can borrow one from somebody else for the purposes of the application. So read to the end, check who you need to get to sign it. If the guidelines have question by question prompts, so at question 6, we ask this. And what we actually mean is tell us about the 3 or 4 following things. Please do read it. I've been a grant assessor, they're there for a reason. Tiny little bit about outputs and outcomes. The outputs are the things that are easily countable. So we'll run 2 training sessions. We'll have 10 volunteering mornings, and we'll grow, I've just clicked a figure here, 1,500 trees for each year. So I guess if you grow things for more than 1 year, you might have 3,000, 4,500, maybe 5,000 with wastage, the things that don't make it all the way through, or just a bit runty and you don't want to use them. The outcomes are rather more subjective, and are less easy to count or just make an estimate for. So with people or the habitats that result from your project. So are your volunteers more, whatever the social stories you're telling with your volunteers, and I guess local provenance, I guess if you've got a record of where your seed came from and how successful you were in getting the sort of things you wanted, that's a bit easier to do. Certainly than sometimes the people evaluation is. And the people, you go for slightly larger things. Monitoring is how you collect it and just, log the number of new faces at volunteering sessions or whatever. And evaluation is really going through and having a good look at it. A word of caution is if your funder is asking for it, provides you with a detailed report template, have a look at it when you get the money, so that you've actually planned what you need to record as you go along, and you don't get to the end of a year program and go, how many people came out 11 months ago? It's easier to do it as you go along. Little few pointers here on writing. Keep it short, simple, not too flowery. Again, go back to the person reading this may know nothing about the world of trees. So don't fill it full of lots of acronyms and jargon, and try and keep it fairly straightforward. Obviously, if you're applying to a fund that is all about trees, then by all means use the technical language for it, because they'll be expecting you to show your stuff. Address the funder's priorities. What are they interested in? And answer the question. Try and, give it a bit of life. Some of the charitable trusts that we've been trying to approach recently, they're getting 20 and more times oversubscribed. How is your project going to leap off the page on the first SIF? What is interesting about what you're doing that makes you stand out from other projects? Why would trees excite that someone from that organization? Make it sound as though you know what you're doing. So, I put that line. Our regular retired volunteers will meet every second Tuesday morning. Yeah, it's Ron Searle. It is what it says on the tin. Some funders really hate contingencies or miscellaneous. It's generally with funders, like the one I referred to, went back and said, we don't need those finger posts anymore. Highways came and put them up. Can I spend the money for the finger post sign saying to the park on 2 pop-up banners that we can use at events to say we're here and we're not community service, we're the friends of the park? Absolutely fine. Go ahead and do it. A lot of funders, this is moving on from getting it to running it. The key thing is keep your dialogue going. If your timeline starts to slip or something has to change dramatically, send them an email. get them on the phone, whatever they suggested, and say, this is what's happened, this is what we'd like to do instead. Is that okay? And generally, they'll come back and say, that's fine. Because what funders don't like is having to get money back off you. Because if they've allocated a whole load of money to groups, they don't want to see it coming back. They're a funder, they give money away. They want to see it doing good stuff. If you are doing multiple applications, I said some of the things that are these days, you know, on the overall, only 1 in 20 applicants is going to get the money. So you might go, right, we need £1,000. Well, we better write 3 or 4 applications at least for £1,000. What are you going to do if more than £1,000 comes in? Will anyone defer your money to next year? Is there something else you might want to do? Just, yeah, because somebody will say, you know, don't over apply. Well, the problem is these days, if you don't over apply, then you're probably going to end up without any money. Unless a funder has said, yeah, that's an absolute ringer, we're definitely going to fund it. Please do put an application in, because that generally means that you're onto quite a good chance. And your 5% will come up to 60, 70%. If you have got time and you've got somebody else, do get someone else to read your bid, or park it up, do something else for a day, come back to it and go, if I was reading this as an outsider, does it really make sense? Oh my goodness, I've missed a word out, that third sentence. It makes no sense at all. You know, is the summary section, the first bit they're going to read, attention grabbing and clear? Check your maths. One of my bugbears is online forms that do not self-calculate the total. It's really easy to mess it up. Have you provided all the requested supporting documents? There was a large scheme that someone in Leeds was involved in recently, and we know someone on the inside of it who said of 250 people who applied to that scheme, only one organisation didn't submit all the supporting documents. And they didn't even get through the first sift out. We think the bid was actually quite good, but it fell at that hurdle. Some funders can be kind and they'll drop me a note saying, did you mean not to include that? Send it in pronto. One word away, most forms will now say, do not send us loads of extra guff. Assessors don't have time to read it. Stuff, not stiff. You know, give them what they say. If they want to follow up, they follow up, or you give them the link to the website. Assessors do use websites a lot these days. So they will look on your Facebook or other things and go, oh, right, this is what these people are up to. So if you do have a social media presence, if you can, keep it live, keep it current, make it look like you're an organisation that's going places. Hope that makes sense. You know, if you go and look at it and nothing's been posted for 3 years, doesn't give them confidence. And if you're large enough to have a website in addition to your social media, again, try and keep it fresh. I would probably say within reason, keep it simple, and then it's easy to just put some news up or something so it doesn't get dated. And again, they think that you're a thriving, going places organisation that is worthy of support. That's just a whole cycle of going around doing stuff. That's one of the ones I borrowed. So in conclusion, as I'm up against my time, be clear about what you want to do. Understand what the funders are going to be interested in, and make sure that you've identified ones that match what you want to do. You know, if it's a tree nursery, it's very clear what you want to do. If you've got a social element to it, but maybe don't try and shoehorn your project into funds and sources of money that don't match. Respect the guidance. That's what they said they want to fund. Talk to them or listen to them if they offer that. If you've got several people working on it, or you've got a busy life doing other things, keep a log of what you've been up to, who you went to, how successful it was. Work well ahead of the deadlines. Increasingly, we are seeing funds closing early or opening. They'll open from a set point and they'll basically say, we've got a number of applications that we can cope with. Once we hit whatever it is, down it comes, and that may be it for a quarter or even a year. So if you've identified someone thinking, we'd really be a good fit for that, what you may have to do is try and get in and see what they're asking for, and then be fully prepared for the next time it opens. So your bid gets in really, really close, and hopefully to the scheme opening and you get considered. Thank you, funders. They're all human beings. You know, nice, polite messages. If you talk to them, be, what you call it, honest in your praise, but thank them for what they do. Thank, whether the people on the panel or the people who push the documents around to send to the panel. If it's appropriate and they want it, some funders actually don't want any coverage. Put them in your newsletters, in your socials. If it's worthy of a sight sign, give them the credit. It's good for them. It's good if someone visits your project to have a look. They see that's what you do. Finish on time, as I've said, or talk to them and put your reports in. Some people like community foundations, you can't put another bid in if you are behind on the previous report. Thank you, and I'll see you at the Q&A at the end. I hope I haven't eaten too much into Ben's time there. Stop share.
That's excellent. Thank you very much, John. Very informative presentation and some really good tips. I think it's obviously key to be prepared, especially when you're applying for funding. And yeah, as I mentioned before, if anyone has any questions for John, we will be having a Q&A session at the end. So just after Ben has spoken. So I'll pass over now to Ben. So we've heard from John about more foundation and funds that you can apply to. And Ben's going to speak to us about another form of fundraising and his direct experience recently with crowdfunding. So Ben, I'll pass over to you.
Thank you. Hopefully you can see my screen.
Yep.
Yeah. And thank you, John Preston. That was really, really interesting, just full of advice, and so much of it applies to what I'm going to talk about too. So it's brilliant. And I think you went in a lot more detail than I do on some of the key points. So that was really interesting. So I'm Ben, just to give you a bit of context of what I'm talking around today. So I'm the Community Tree Nursery lead at Rooted Chippenham. And that's what I do. I volunteer to do that on weekends. My day job is in marketing and communications. That's what I do professionally. Nothing to do with trees whatsoever. But I love trees, and I'm involved with Rooted Chippenham, who are a incredible community garden project started in 2021. So it's been running a few years now. It's based in the grounds of the Wiltshire and Swindon History Centre, which is in Chippenham. And they're a registered community interest company. They're a CIC, and they've basically grown this incredible community garden over the last few years, where volunteers come to grow incredible fruit and veg and wildflowers, and to set up these little wildlife habitats. They have loads of volunteers, all ages and abilities. They grow some incredible foods. And if you go and volunteer, you can take as much produce as you like, and any excess is shared with the community. So it's a brilliant project. They had nothing to do with trees whatsoever until I started volunteering with them, and I suggested in November that I'd like to start a community tree nursery in Chippenham, and they seemed like the ideal place to do it. And they're such a friendly bunch, they readily agreed. As long as I'm going to lead it, they'll support it, and we can do it on their site. So that's the idea. So our community tree nursery, we're aiming to grow and give away 1,000 trees per year. So we're kind of small scale in the terms of, comparing to lots of other tree nurseries. But yeah, that's how much we're doing. For us, that's a big target. And we have a focus on native edible tree species. And our crowdfunder to make this happen finished on the 2nd of March. So yeah, this is like last week. This is really fresh when our crowdfunder finished. And we are basically launching the tree nursery now. So we've been really busy building all the infrastructure we need. That's just finished, and we'll be getting well into our seed sowing, etc. In the coming days, really. So that's where we're up to. So I thought it's worth just starting with what is a crowdfunder, because I'm aware not everyone may be familiar with that funding model. So essentially, it's a way to raise money for a project or business by asking many people to contribute a small amount of money via an online platform. So instead of going to one funder, as John was talking about, to ask for, I need X amount, a crowdfunder says to a big group of people, we need to raise £1,000, and could you all contribute £5 or £10 or £20, whatever you can afford, to see if we hit our target. There's lots of platforms out there, crowdfunder platforms. One of the biggest and most well-known is crowdfunder.co.uk. There's a huge spectrum of projects on there, and it's worth going to have a look if you want to have a taste of what crowdfunders could be. And it's a really good platform. Everything's set up. You can load a project on there. It takes card payments from your supporters. It builds it up into a pot. It shows people how much is raised. When it's finished, it will release the funds to you. Dead easy to use. Really, really good and well established. And it's worth having a browse on there just for inspiration, because there's some incredible projects on there. Some have raised hundreds of thousands of pounds from the general public, from lots and lots of small donations. And there's also some really small scale projects like ours, which set out to raise £1,500. So that's worth a look. If you're not familiar with crowdfunding, go and have a look at crowdfunder.co.uk. So our crowdfunder, we had an initial target of £1,500, which is what we needed to grow 500 trees a year. We're using root trainer pots, and we needed to set everything up and get all the consumables. So that's our initial target, to raise £1,500. And when we launched, the day we launched, I was completely full of self-doubt and convinced the whole thing would be a failure and it'd be rather embarrassing. But we hit that target in 20 hours, which was astounding. We couldn't believe it. And bear in mind, a crowdfunder campaign has to run for about 6 weeks. So we were all set for the long haul, but we did it in less than a day. And we were just completely blown away by the response from our community. So we set a stretch target. If you hit your target, you can then set a stretch target. So we doubled our target to say, look, if we can raise £3,000, we can grow double the amount of trees. We'll grow 1,000 a year, and it will keep us running for at least the next 6 years. This will be incredible. And then we hit that target within a week. So within our first week, we doubled our target and achieved it, which is just incredible. I'll explain all the little things we did, which I think helped to achieve that in this presentation. Now, we could have stopped there. If you hit your target in crowdfunder, you can close the crowdfunder early and cash out, which some do. However, we still had 5 weeks left. And although we'd raised enough for the tree nursery, we didn't want to be greedy. We thought, because Rooted is a CIC, it has operational costs, like doing annual accounts, etc., which for a small organisation is a cost to bear. We thought it would be great if any extra funding we raised could help support the operational costs of Rooted generally, which will help the tree nursery and the garden project. And you're allowed to do this so long as you make it clear to your funders. So we wrote to crowdfunder and said, we want to do this. Is that okay? They said yes, as long as you state it on your page. So we just updated our crowdfunder page to say any funds we raise over our stretch target will go towards the operational costs of Rooted, which will be a massive help. So we let it run to the end, and it's just finished, and we raised a total of £4,310. Which was a huge success. We never saw that coming at all, but it's brilliant. So our tree nursery has been well and truly set up, and we have enough funds to keep us going for many, many years. Rooted, the CIC, has enough money to keep it ticking over for a few years too. So all round, it's been brilliant. So why did we choose to crowdfund? So we did have the option of going for local authority funding. Chippenham Council, Town Council, do a climate fund where you can apply for £5,000. And we hit all the eligibility criteria for that, but why didn't we do it? So for us, the timescale was too risky and it's very rigid. So we wanted to apply in December, but they wouldn't look at the application until the end of February, and we wouldn't hear back if it was successful or not till March. But that's just when their committee meets to look at the applications. And for us, it was too risky, because if they said no, or sometimes they offer less than you're asking for, it would be too late for us to raise other funding, basically, and it would sort of kill our project for the year. So that's one reason. It's a bit too risky. And it also felt like we're trying to launch a project in isolation, not with the community, which I don't know, didn't feel that appealing to us. So we looked at the crowdfunding model, which had a lot of benefits. So you can raise funds when you want. You can start a crowdfunder whenever you want. You have that flexibility. It also means you can connect really early with the community. So we didn't have a tree nursery. It didn't even exist. Yet we're connecting with our community, before we've even done it. Before we've even grown a tree, people know about it, and they're literally investing in it. which is fantastic. It could be you run a crowdfunder for an existing tree nursery because you want to expand or buy new equipment or whatever it is. But either way, it means you can connect with the community from the very, very beginning, the inception of that project. And I think that's a really powerful thing. And I think the point about people investing in the project, they're not just investing in your project, they're investing in having loads more trees, thousands more trees in their community by funding your project. So they're not just investing in a project, they're investing in thousands of trees being added to their community. So it's really appealing to people. And a really nice thing about the crowdfunding, which I'll come on to in the next slide, is there's match funding available, which means you only need to actually raise half the amount of money that you require, which is obviously attractive. So this is made possible by, the big one is Aviva. So Aviva, the big insurance company, they run a community fund, which is part of the crowdfunder platform. So essentially, one of the criteria is that your projects should support, your project should prevent, prepare for, and protect against the impacts of climate change, which obviously a community tree nursery does. It ticks all the boxes, which is fantastic. So tree nurseries definitely eligible for this fund. It's based on the crowdfunder platform. It's all built into there, so it's very easy to use, and it runs just like a normal crowdfunder does. The only difference is every time someone donates, Aviva will match that donation up to £250 per donation, and they'll match fund up to £50,000 per project. So it's a huge amount of money here. So if someone just does a small donation of 20 quid, that's worth £40 to your project, which is just brilliant. You can apply at any time to Aviva. So you have to apply to Aviva, as John was explaining. It's an application form, just like he was saying. You have to apply to them in the first instance. And if they approve your project, you can then make it live whenever you want. You can launch that on the crowdfunder like the next day if you wanted. So we applied to Aviva. We spent like a week doing the application, submitted it, thought we'd have to wait weeks, but they actually responded within 24 hours to say, yeah, you're approved, which was great. It's a very quick turnaround. But we didn't launch straight away. We basically waited a month before we went live with the crowdfunder. And that's just so we could prepare, which I'm going to talk about, all the preparation we did before we launched, which was really important. The only caveats with this is to apply to the community fund for the match funding, you must be a UK charity, a CIO, CLG, CIC, CASC. You must be UK based. You must have been one of those for at least 12 months, which was the beauty of us launching the tree nursery through Rooted, because they were a CIC. They've been up and running for a few years. So that was a perfect match for us to be able to do this. So if that sounds appealing, you can go to avivacommunityfund.co.uk and you can look it up and find out more, but it's free money. So if you're eligible and you're thinking of crowdfunding, definitely do that. So John's touched on this really nicely about all the details you need to include when you're filling in funding applications. The same is true for the crowdfunder. So you need to tell an engaging story twice. You need to do it when you're applying to Aviva to be approved, and you need to do it again on the crowdfunding page. The lovely thing is, when you're approved, Aviva turn your application into your crowdfunder page, which is great. You need to adapt it a little bit because there's different audiences, but essentially, this is all the stuff John was talking about. You need to clearly communicate what you're doing, why you're doing it, who's involved, when it's happening, how can people support it, how are you going to use the money. Just like John was saying, I really recommend using AI like ChatGPT. It's a free tool. The way we used it was, we drafted this for each of these points. We really just had like put 3 bullet points under each of like the key 3 things we want to say about each one. And then you can chuck that in ChatGPT and say, please take these points, turn it into a crowdfunding page to blah, 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 make it really engaging and passionate. And it will spit out a draft of your crowdfunding page. It's not perfect and you will want to edit it, but it's a brilliant starting point and it's a lot easier to edit that than a blank page. So I would definitely recommend using those tools because it's easy when you're writing a funding application for it to be really dry. And I think John mentioned trying to get the passion in because people read funding applications, and the crowdfunding page that's especially true. You're appealing to a general public. So I think the key is for it to be as concise as possible and as passionate as possible. Just make it really come alive, and the AI tools can really help you do that. So on the crowdfunder page, and actually in the application to Aviva, you can submit a short video. And I think the stats are for crowdfunders, if they don't have a video, they raise 2 or 3 times less the amount of money. There's some stat like that, but basically you're crazy not to include a video. And it can just be recording yourself on your mobile phone. And it doesn't have to look good. I think it's great if it doesn't look good. It looks a bit more genuine and authentic. And it just shows who's behind the project, which goes a long way. So you definitely need to include a video to be successful. In terms of the text on the page, you want to keep it no more than around 1,000 words. People just won't read it otherwise. And if you're including text, break it up into lots of paragraphs, have lots of subheadings, make it easily scannable, very readable. Include photos if you can of your project and the people involved. Include an infographic if you can. We're lucky. One of our team is an illustrator and knocked up this like really beautiful illustration as an infographic, which is great. It just brings it to life. So I think if you can use all of those elements, you can make a really engaging page without someone wading through lots of text. And using my communications skills, that's what I do as a day job, I know that some people go on there and watch the video and donate. Some people just look at the photos and donate. Some people might just scan the subheadings and donate. A few people will read the whole page, but not many. So it's good to have all that content on there if you can, just so it appeals to as many people as possible. So that's really helpful if you can do that. So funder rewards. Yeah, this is an interesting one. So on a crowdfunder, you can just ask for donations, and some do. You can also offer a funder reward, which is to say, if you donate £20, we'll give you X, which could be, I don't know, could be anything. You'll send them in the post, anything to reward their donation, basically. The key with funder rewards is to keep them really relevant to your project. This is something we've learned, which I'll show you in a minute, which is quite an interesting learn. It's worth thinking outside the box, which again, I'll talk about. You should definitely include rewards for corporate donations. Now, we kept this super simple. We said, if you donate £250 as a business, because that's the most Aviva would match funds, if you donate £250, we'll put your name on our website as a corporate sponsor of our tree nursery. And we had 3 businesses did that. So with match funding, that gave us 1,500 quid right there. And that's just from 3 companies. And we didn't actually have to send them anything. We just need to update our website. Like, it's a no-brainer. Now, I've put Be Cheeky on here because we were quite cheeky because we didn't have any, we were scratching our heads. What can we use as a funder reward? We had the idea we could include some books. Could we get some authors to give us some signed books? So if you donate 20 quid, you get a signed copy of this amazing book about trees. So we compiled a list of 10 authors we'd like to write to, hoping one of them would write back. So I wrote to all 10 of them. And then the next day, 9 replied to say, yes, we'll donate some signed books. Yeah, which we never expected. So my house turned into a little bookshop for a while with big piles of books everywhere. So we had all these amazing books to give us funder rewards. So for most of those, if you donated 15 or 20 quid, you could get a signed copy of one of these books, which was great. We also contacted Westonbirt, the National Arboretum, which is a 20-minute drive from Chippenham. Absolutely stunning place. It's like the National Collection of Trees. I think it's how they build themselves. It's beautiful. We asked if they'd give us a membership or some free entry tickets or something, and they said yes. They gave us a family entry worth 40 quid for free, which was one of our rewards, which is brilliant. So be cheeky, ask people. We basically just said, we're doing this amazing project. We think it's a great fit with what you do. It'd be amazing if you could support it. That's literally all we said. And all these people said yes. So our big learn was, despite the fact we raised 3 times what we were hoping to, only half the books were claimed. We assumed all the rewards would go. They didn't. Loads of people donated without choosing a reward for whatever reason. I don't know why. It seems mad to me. I'm a reader. It seems crazy not to get a free book if you're going to give some money. But only half were claimed. And also the books about trees all went very quickly in the first week or 2. We have some books which are like about the climate crisis in general and recycling. Hardly any of those went. So the books that weren't directly relevant to our project just weren't taken at all. So in hindsight, I wouldn't have bothered with those. I'd have stuck to books just about trees, for example, to keep funder rewards relevant. But another benefit of the funder rewards is it's like an endorsement of your project. So on our crowdfunder page, we're basically saying all these like best-selling authors and the National Arboretum have endorsed our project, and they've donated these gifts as our funder rewards. So it has like a double effect, really. So front load your campaign. This is really, really, really important. I can't overstress this enough. And what does it mean? Basically, most of the effort goes in before you launch your crowdfunder. It's a 6-week campaign, but before it even launches, you need to plan exactly who you're going to promote it to, when, and how. So you basically want to make a communications plan, which sounds fancy. It's nothing more than a spreadsheet or a Word document. You just list all the individuals, organizations, Facebook groups, WhatsApp groups, all that stuff, but who you want to promote it to. List them all down. So you've got a long list. Get your friends to suggest ones you should add. And then just for each one, decide what are you going to ask them and when and how. You're asking them to share? You're asking them to donate to the campaign? And also draft all the emails, social media posts you might do, press releases, funder updates. Try and prepare as much of that as possible before you launch, so you've got it all to hand. It makes life so much easier, and you can ping out these regular social media posts and updates to your funders via the crowdfunder platform. You can just ping them out with like very little effort, really regularly, and that really helps build the momentum up. A key bit of advice that was given to us was to warm up people before it launches, and that is like brilliant advice. Basically, we selected some of our contacts in our communications plan. We're going to contact a week before we launch to say, hey guys, in a week we're launching this amazing crowdfunder. We really need your help. Could you support us in the first day or two to really give us some momentum and help share it so we can sort of launch with a bang? And we did that to all our Rooted Garden volunteers. We have about between 30 and 40 volunteers there we contacted. We contacted local councillors and the MP. Just to warm people up, really. And that was great because on the day we launched, you can see the effects. We hit our target really quickly because people were ready for it and waiting. And I've been told if a crowdfunder doesn't start getting like a decent amount of donations in the first day or two, it just falls a bit flat because people think it's not going to be successful. So it's really important to get that initial momentum up. And we also agreed to some of the corporate sponsorships before we launched. We contacted a few companies. 2 of them said yes in advance. When you launch, yeah, we'll go and do the 250 quid donation. So we agreed those. We didn't wait for people to find it. We went out there and said, we think this would be a great fit with your company. Would you be able to support us? 2 of them said, yeah. A third found it and did it without us having heard of them before, which is brilliant. But yeah, be cheeky with corporate sponsorship. And it's really important to keep the momentum going. So posting regular social media posts and updates. A member of our team at Rooted does all the Facebook stuff. I don't really do social media. They do a brilliant job and they were great. They were putting out all these posts we drafted really quickly. It's really important. If you don't tell people about the crowdfunder, no one's going to find it. Once it's on the crowdfunder platform, don't think people are going to just magically find it and donate. They won't, unless you're like poking them all the time and reminding them. And people might need to see it 3 or 4 times before they go and donate. So that's really important. It's especially true in the first and last week of our campaign. Most crowdfunders apparently in the first week are really active and in the last week too. And in the middle, there's a big lull. We found that was exactly the case. So you put a lot of your effort into the first and last weeks. And it's important to publish funder updates. So in the crowdfunder platform, you can post an update which goes on your page, your crowdfunding page. It also gets pinged to everyone who's funded you. And that's important. So when you hit your target, you can put a little update out there and thank people. You can announce your stretch target. You can say, hey, we're at the midway point, or we're just about to end. That's really important. And again, that's one of the things you can draft before the crowdfunder begins. So it's really easy. It should be easy to put these updates out. And the basic rule up at the bottom, which is true of all the marketing and comms I've ever done, is if you're not sick of talking about it, you haven't talked about it enough. A lot of communication is repetition. People need to see things quite a few times, social media posts and updates and emails before they sort of act on it. So if you feel like you're really sick of talking about it, then you're probably doing a great job because you've talked about it a lot, which is good. So finally, I know I've talked a lot. I just want to finish up on the benefits we found of a crowdfunder, because obviously We exceeded our funding goal, which is amazing, but we've extracted far more value from it than that. So I think a big one is we've attracted loads of new volunteers and supporters to our garden. So in the middle of our crowdfunder campaign, we had one of our regular garden meetups. It's in the middle of January, really cold day. We normally get about 20 people that time of year. Another 10 people turned up just because they'd seen our crowdfunder and they heard about the tree nursery and wanted to come and see what it's about and could they get involved. So yeah, we've attracted a whole new base of volunteers, which is incredible. We've found new supporters. We found Ben Raskin, who's head of horticulture and agroforestry at the Soil Association. It turns out he lives nearby, he supported it, and he was keen to offer his expertise. So he gave a public talk at our Rooted Garden a couple of weeks ago about trees, why they're amazing, which is brilliant. And he's a lovely guy, very well respected. So it's brilliant to have his support suddenly come into our project, and that's all thanks to the crowdfunder. And lastly, our community is excited about trees. People are talking about our crowdfunder. We haven't sown anything yet. And our community's like really excited about it. People are coming up to us to ask whether it's going to be ready and all this kind of stuff. And I think that's the kind of momentum we wouldn't have got if we just applied for funding from the local authority, for example. We would have sort of set up our tree nursery in isolation without anyone else really being involved, apart from our volunteers. So yeah, for us, I think to wrap up, it's just been a huge success story and it's taken a lot of effort, but it's really reaped the rewards in more than just the money, I'd say. And I've put our address of our crowdfunder at the bottom there. So it's now finished, but you can go and look at it. I think it's up there forever now. You can go and have a look if you want to get some inspiration and yeah, see how we did it. And I think that's it from me.
Thank you very much, Ben. That really was fascinating and just so encouraging to see a success story like that. You know, from the ground view up. So well done to everyone involved there. Yeah, so we'll move on then. If there's any questions for either John or Ben, do please pop them into the group chat or into the chat. I'll maybe just kick off. I guess I'd like to maybe sort of a similar question for both Ben and John in terms of what was the most regular size of donation that you were receiving on your crowdfunder? And John, what is the sort of average size, I guess, of the kind of applications that you're going for or the grant funding that you'd be involved in applying for? Ben, maybe ask you first.
Yeah, thank you. That's a really good question. So apparently the most common crowdfunder donation across all crowdfunders is around £20, which I think was true for us. We had some people donated a fiver. Some people donated 50 quid. I think that's the most a personal donation was 50 quid. But yeah, majority around £20.
Okay. Yeah. So it's about, as you said earlier, it's a lot of people. You're asking a lot of people for a small amount of money. Yeah. And John, what about with the sort of funding applications?
I mean, I guess, you know, as I said, I do stuff for Friends of a Park, which maybe some of the people on the call, you know, so we can be doing often around 2,000, something like that. Get a couple of those in a year with it, you know, staying under our 5,000 limit. I mean, we did a crowdfunder through Speyside as part of the link to the Parks Trust, in fact, and yeah, pretty similar experience to Ben. You know, £20 from quite a few people. One or two people went up to 50. I think we got someone, the brother of one of our regular team leaders, you know, pulled some money out of his company's corporate pot for us, you know, so that personal connection really important. I would say, yeah, I think you had a lot more skills to put behind it, Ben, and your results speak for it. We really struggled to raise the 500-600 that we needed to trigger the match, which was bigger than 1 for 1, fortunately, and I'm now trying to implement that. I mean, with the other things with the Parks Trust, yeah, sort of 3.5, 5, 10,000. I think in my research and work, we're finding that, you know, there's a lot of stuff that's really angled towards the smaller grassroots organisations in the 5-10 category. You know, we're trying to bid for bigger stuff because some of the small, if you run a program that is costing 30,000-40,000 a year or more, running it on sub 5k contributions from trust just gives you a huge headache in what have you actually sold to different people in the reporting. So you're trying to go for bigger things or support the local staff to go for bigger things, and there aren't that many. So the bigger ones tend to be more the local authority sort of major grant programs and things, or some of the schemes like that. And then you get into the the larger stuff, which is what our roles are really trying to aim for, and where one of our trustees is on the call. There certainly was at the beginning. But there actually aren't that many funds that are giving out 6-7 figure grants, and the competition at every level is high. If you follow the charity press, there are a lot of organisations who are having to cut the size of their services in response to various funding problems. And I think what you're finding is there are a lot of people at all sizes of organisations chasing money, and it's resulting in an awful lot of bids being made, and quite a lot of funds actually saying we're taking a break while we rethink how we operate, because if you used to get 500 applicants a year to a major trust and you're now getting 2,500, you've got a huge admin issue. So that's going to be worked through. So yes, I think it's fair to say for conservation volunteers, there are a lot of sub 10k stuff going on, because there just aren't that many schemes that offer 20, 30, 40,000.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's very understandable. I think certainly with as you were mentioning, the amount of people who are applying now, I think it really emphasizes what both yourself and Ben were saying in terms of the key is to put the work in before you even start, to make sure that you've sort of done your homework in a way, and that you've done the groundwork, so that your applications either it's spot on, it's ready to go, or else you're hitting the ground running with your crowdfunder, because otherwise, if it's not up to scratch and someone's getting 1,500 applications, they're not simply just not going to look at it, as you were alluding to earlier, John. But thanks very much for that. Is there any other questions that anyone would like to ask? Okay, question from Mary, and that's can fundraising include funding for employment costs? I guess that kind of depends. John, you might be best placed to answer that one.
Yeah, a common set of sections in any set of guidelines will be we fund and a list, and we don't fund and a list. Yeah. So, if they're expecting to fund activity, I guess potentially predominantly in the employed sector, or you might be a voluntary organisation who brings freelancers in, like a summer play scheme or something like that, then they'll say, we are willing to cover costs. Other ones will very clearly say, this is not for wages, this is not for core costs. They only want to fund specific stuff. And I think sometimes they're happy to fund, using an example of play schemes, you bringing somebody in to deliver for you, but not for your own staff to deliver the activity, if that makes sense. So it is down to the specific organisation. I guess if you're thinking about crowdfunders, if the overall crowdfund, if it's a match one, what does the match funder say? What are they prepared to match for? And I guess the only other rule with the platforms, I think, Ben, would be, if you state clearly that we are raising money to employ a member of staff, then that's what people have donated to. So that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe so. I have been told, though, like the crowdfunder, if you're covering things like wages, it's quite dangerous, because then you don't guarantee you've secured that employment in the future, once that funding's run out. So it can be a little bit dodgy. Like, it's not an ideal thing to do, basically. So it's better to use it for like capital costs or operational costs, like annual accounts or something like that. Yeah, so you have to be careful, I think, if you're going for employment costs. Can you sustain that in the future?
Okay, thanks. Yep. So it seems possibly, but just be careful is really the answer. This one might be for you then, Ben, as well. Emily's asking, is there a limit to how many times you can use crowdfunder?
Ooh, good point. So I know via Viva Community Fund, you can apply up to 3 times a year. So you could run 3 projects a year with their match funding from the same organisation, but it's limited to the 50k limit applies for that 12-month period. So those 3 projects can't raise more than 50k in match funding. You can go on to raise as much as you want from the crowd. You can far exceed that. I know even these trees had a really successful crowdfunder for their new Lower Chew Forest project. They raised well over 100k, like loads of money. It's incredible. So they maxed out the crowdfunding and went the match funding went way beyond it. And they continue to get donations. But yeah, so you can do 3 a year. I think on the crowdfunder platform without the match funding, I think you can do as many as you want. I think, but yeah, you'd have to check the small print.
Okay, thank you. That's good to know. We've a query from Elizabeth who says, I have more than £6,000 in the bank and I only have a very basic organisation structure. Is this a problem? John, that might be something you could advise on.
I don't know. I think the key one, the certain key trigger is turnover. So I think we're trying to wrap up something up before the end of March. So in effect, we start another sub 5k from the 1st of April. Carrying reserves from year to year may be fine. I would suggest if your volunteer centre has someone who advises small groups on status and charity registration, you check with them. It's not my area of comfort zone. I just know we've resolved that we will keep our turnover under the 5k because there is no appetite amongst the group to go through the process.
Okay, thanks, John. Yeah, I think that's good advice, really, to Elizabeth. They sort of seek out who would know best about that particular thing. Okay, if there's no other questions, then I think at this stage we'll maybe call it a night. It's been a fascinating evening. Really interesting presentations from both John and Ben. I'd just like to thank both of them again for taking the time to come along and join us this evening. I hope you find this as useful as we did, and as John mentioned earlier in the call, I'll endeavour to share the PowerPoint slides with everyone, if that's okay with yourselves. So yeah, thanks again, everyone, for coming along and joining us this evening. We don't currently have a webinar lined up. This is, as I said, the end of our current series of webinars for CTNC, but do keep an eye out, and hopefully we will have more networking and information sharing in the future. So yeah, just once again, thank you both very, very much to Ben and John, and to Taliesin, who did our tech for this evening. And thanks to everyone who came along and joined us. So please enjoy the rest of your evening, and I hope to see you again soon.